Hello and welcome to the Thinker Masterclass here at A Little Peace and Quiet, our first live class for about 6 months. So I want to thank you if you're tuned in and joining me, and also if you're listening in the future, I'd like to thank you as well. Speaking from the past. Now, before we start tonight, I just want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I'm sitting on tonight, the Dja Dja Wurrung people, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. And as we go through tonight, we'll go for about half an hour. We might stretch it a bit if my broadcasting service will let me. As we go through, you can ask me a question through the Facebook page, and you can also tweet me at Peace Mindfulness, or send me an email, ollie@peacethroughmindfulness.com.au, and all those details are just above the broadcast box. And you should be able to dip in and dip out at any time, and as I say, you can also come back later, listen again, and download it. So over the past couple of weeks at A Little Peace and Quiet, we've been doing a series on what I call the thinker, which is one part of our experience as human beings. And the thinker is a term that Eckhart Tolle, the author of The Power of Now and A New Earth, I don't know if he coined it, but he uses it a lot to describe that part of us that's constantly talking to us, the voice in our heads that's judging, that's making plans, that's dreaming about the past and the future, and that's telling the story of our lives. So tonight I want to explore the two sides of you, I'm calling it. And one of those sides is the thinker, and the other side is awareness. So we're going to look at those two sides tonight, and we're going to finish with about a 10-minute mindfulness practice at the end, just to give us an experience of both sides of our experience, so to speak. So the two sides of you, within all of us, there is a voice. There's someone talking, there's someone thinking, there's thought arising constantly for human beings. And that thought is sometimes about what's happening now, sometimes about our experience, and more often it's about the past or it's about the future. And it's completely irrelevant to what's happening now. Now, thought is no problem. I want to get that clear straight away. Thought is absolutely no problem if we have a healthy relationship with it. Thought only becomes a problem when we get sucked into thinking. And I want to explain the difference between thought and thinking before we get too far in. So, thought arises constantly for all of us, but thinking only happens when we engage with thought, when we get lost in thought. And in the Zen tradition, in Zen Buddhism, their whole practice as they describe it is learning not to think. Now, for many people, and I know when I first started practicing Zen, I thought that meant having a blank mind. It meant no thought arising. But what it actually means is that when thought comes, we let it come. When thought goes, we let it go. That we don't get caught up in thought. We don't get lost in thought. We just allow it to arise and disappear. And who is it that's allowing it to arise and disappear? Well, that's the other side of you. Because just as there's thought, obviously there's also awareness of thought. So there's someone who's thinking, and there's also someone who is watching thought, someone who's there in the background. So tonight, I want to help you to make the shift from thinking to awareness, from thinking about life to actually experiencing life. Now, when the thinker takes hold, as it does for most of us and as it has with our entire society, our entire civilization, something interesting happens, which I call the story of you. So as the thinker takes over, which probably happens when we're kids, that if you look at young babies, like my little daughter's 18 months old, she's not too interested in the past or the future. She's really just interested in what's going on now. She's really engaged with the present moment. She's wondrous about everything that's around her, and she just loves whatever's happening. Now, my son, who's almost 5, has a really strong story of who he is. He's got a story of the past, he's got a story of what should happen in the future, and that story starts to get in the way of his enjoyment of life at times. So as we go through life, we start to develop this strong sense of identity, and it's all derived through thinking, through associating with and attaching to thought. So there's simple things like my name, what I look like, where I live, what language I speak, that have no relevance to a 6-month-old. But as thought takes over our lives, we become more and more caught up in this identity, which I just call the story of you, or the story of me. And of course, we need some of those things, or some of those things are helpful to navigate the world. Like, it's helpful to have a name that we all agree on. It's helpful to have a language that we all agree on. It's helpful to have a job that you know where you need to go in the mornings. But when we start to think that this is who I am, rather than this is an experience I'm having right now, then things start to get messy. Because as soon as I've got this solid sense of identity, I've also got something that I need to defend. And I've also got something that I need to protect, and something that I need to compare with other people. So as we get lost in that identity, we start to compare ourselves. So you'll see kids around my son's age start to talk about how, oh, I'm faster than him, or I'm no good at that, or he's better than me at that. And you'll also see them start to get stressed and upset about things that are unfair for this me. So they start to lose the ability, or have a diminished ability, to just respond to life as it's happening. They start to get caught up in the events that are unfolding and how they affect this me. So in your life, there's simply experience. That's all we can really point to. Everything that we call me is a thought, it's a memory, it's an old experience regurgitated by the mind. There's no solidity to it. There's nothing special about it. But when we all get attached to it, then stress is the inevitable result. So life as a story conflicts with life as an experience. So what we usually do with our story is we project it into the future. We look at what's happened in my story in the past, what needs to happen in the future, and we get caught up in that. So we develop an expectation. So Elaine, who's a friend of ours on Facebook, has sent in a really great question about frustrated expectation, essentially. So what happens? How do you deal with it when you have a Sorry, I just lost my second there. So I'll just backtrack a little bit. We had a great question on Facebook from Elaine about what do we do when we develop all these expectations of what's going to happen in the future and then they're frustrated. So that could be that we meet the love of our life and develop all these plans and then it doesn't work out. Or it could be our dream job that we think we'll be doing forever that suddenly turns sour or the job's not there anymore. It could be any number of things. All of us every day have experiences of frustrated expectation where we get up in the morning and we expect we're going to have a coffee and then we've run out or the milk's gone sour. Now, our level of happiness ordinarily we think is derived from how well our expectations are met by the world and by those around us, when in fact our level of happiness is directly related to how well we deal with these unexpected events. Now, obviously, this is like snake bite. The best thing is not to get bitten. So the best policy is to spot expectations as they're developing, know them as just thoughts, and keep your experience in the present moment. And I sometimes call this making the shift from judgment to curiosity, because judgment is hard, it's solid, we know what should happen, we know what's best, and we basically know what the world should do, and if it's not conforming, then we tell it what it should be doing. We complain, we have a tantrum, we just feel frustrated and angry. But curiosity has a fundamentally different quality. Now, to be curious, you have to be open-minded. To be open-minded, you have to be experiencing life as it is. To be truly open-minded. What we normally call open-mindedness is just a fairly accepting set of opinions, of thoughts that we believe. But true open-mindedness is just being completely present in this moment, curious about what's happening now and what might happen next. So when it comes to expectation, if we can spot those and start by spotting the small ones, like your cup of coffee in the morning, like that projection that your mind starts to do when you're about to go to a party or you've got something exciting happening about what it's going to be like and who's going to be there, and just snap out of that daydream and come back to experiencing reality right now. And there's a great reason for this. When we're lost in our head and we're projecting this, whether it's wonderful or terrible future event, we're missing out on joy and happiness right now. So we're sacrificing our immediate happiness in the hope of some kind of future happiness. Now, this is obviously problematic because you'll never get to the future. And if anyone has been to the future, please tweet me and tell me what it's like. When we get to what we call the future, it's still the present moment. And of course, the past, it doesn't exist either. It's just a thought in your head. Those things may or may not have happened, but regardless, it's no more than a thought in your head right now. You can't point to the past. So when we get into that situation, the expectation is starting to build, the best thing that we can do is to recognize it, to leave it alone, let it come and go, and bring our attention back to experience, to curiosity. Now, of course, sometimes we will get lost. We will allow those expectations to build. And the best thing that we can do then is to stay with the present moment experience. So let's say you have that situation, the partner leaves, and then you have all these emotions arising because the expectation hasn't been met. And with those emotions, the story continues. So it could be a story of unfairness, it could be a story of sadness, it could be a story of anger, but the story and the emotion will continue to feed each other. So every time you get lost in those thoughts about what that person should or shouldn't have done, or the way things should or shouldn't be, then the emotion gets stronger. And whenever the emotion gets stronger, then our tendency is to run back to the story or to resort to some kind of tool to block out the pain. So something to distract us. What we can do instead is sit and experience the thoughts, sit and experience the emotions, and notice ourselves. This sounds a bit funny at first, but when you practice it, it works, it's nice. Notice ourselves as the one who's watching in the background. Because normally we get so enmeshed in the thought that we start to feel like that thought is me. That's me thinking. But when we're watching a thought arise, and we ask ourselves, who is it that's watching this thought? Who is it that's noticing this emotion arise? The answer to that, we can't answer that. But the experience of noticing that is really powerful. And in that, thoughts lose their power. Emotions lose their power. The story disappears, because it's only a story if you're lost in thought. Otherwise, it's just one thought arising after another. And all of a sudden, we're back in control, and we're back in our peace, in our joy right now, which is the only time, the only place we can be happy is now. So I call this shifting to life as an experience. So within that experience, right now I'm experiencing a sense of tightness in my stomach, or I'm experiencing pain in my chest, or I'm experiencing rapid thoughts arising and disappearing. And isn't that interesting? Now, life as a story is very different to life as an experience. Life as a story might be, that's so unfair, these things always happen to me, he should have, I should have, they should have, and so on and so forth. Now, if we live through that, we'll be stuck in it forever. Because even if the partner stays with you, your mind will find something else to be dissatisfied about. It'll look to politics, it'll look to another relationship, it'll look to whatever. Problems are interchangeable until you learn to live through awareness, and then there are no problems, only experiences. And that's not a word game, that's an experience. That's my direct experience of life. And speaking of experience, we're actually almost 20 minutes into this. I want to finish off the last little bit with a practice that will illustrate and give you an experience of living life as an experience. Sorry, I'm saying experience a lot. And noticing the story. Noticing that life as a story. So wherever you are, if it's possible, take a seat, find a comfortable spot, and you may want to close your eyes, or you may want to keep them open. If you're going to keep them open, then find a spot you can look where you're not going to be distracted by what you see. So somewhere where there's no words or no pictures or no Facebook that's going to grab your attention while you're trying to concentrate. And I think the simplest way to shift from thinking to experience is to just feel the breath. So you can do that by asking yourself the question, am I breathing now? And just letting your body respond, just feeling the answer. So when you feel the answer, you'll feel the lungs expanding, contracting. And if you follow that with your wholehearted attention, your experience will start to slow down. Your thoughts may keep coming and going quickly, but if you can stay with the breath and just let those thoughts cycle through in the background, then your experience will just slow down. So stay with the breath and know that thought is built to be entertaining, it's built to be exciting, interesting, and so of course it's going to grab your attention at some stage. And when it does, you just come back to the breath. And from that place of watching the breath and just feeling yourself breathe in and out, just notice what thoughts are arising in this present moment. So just notice every thought that arises. Watch it arise, watch it disappear, and keep following the breath. Take your attention into the body, deeper into the body, and just feel your body from the inside. Feel the sensations, notice the movement. Just stay really present. And get really sharp on the breath as you do that. So stay with it as it comes in, just follow the flow of it. And as it goes out, follow the flow of that. Stay anchored in the body and the movements of that. And just watch as each thought arises and disappears. Now as you do that, I want to ask you the question, who is it that's watching these thoughts? Ordinarily we identify with thought, but you'll notice that when thought disappears even for an instant, that you don't disappear with it. That you're still there watching. So you can see the thought, you can feel the breath, but who is this you? Now make sure you don't let the mind try to answer this question, because there's no word, there's no label that really covers who you are. We can use some words like awareness or consciousness or life, peace. They're all just words. Let's experience it instead. So breathe. Feel the breath and just sense yourself as the one who's watching there in the background. Be there as the watcher of thought as opposed to the thinker. And whatever thought arises, be sure to not worry about the content of the thoughts. Whatever they're saying is fine. All we're interested in is the process of watching. So all we want to do is make sure that we're aware of thought, that we're not lost in it. We're just watching and enjoying. So whenever you find yourself out of that watching space, getting lost in the thinker, then you just come back to the breath again. There's nothing more complicated than that. Call this a practice rather than a technique because it's something that we keep practicing. So there's no trick to it. You just come back to the breath and then you get lost. And then you come back to the breath, and then you get lost. So the practice is not about staying always right on the razor's edge, right on the present moment. It's about getting lost and coming back, and getting lost and coming back. So come back to the breath now. Notice yourself as that watcher. And just be here in this moment as the one who's watching. That's all. Nothing special, nothing complicated. Just step back from thought, enjoy the breath, and watch the mind continue its cycle as it does. It's just energy filtered through the brain, coming in the form of thought, and just going around and around. And notice the peace that's there when you step out of thinking and into experience. Notice how we didn't need to solve any of your problems to find that peace. We didn't need to wait for the future to find that peace. We didn't need to fix anything from the past. We didn't need anyone else but us to do anything different. We didn't need the world to change its structure. All we needed was to shift our attention from thinking to experience. So as we wrap up this live class tonight, I want to thank you for joining me. I want to thank all the subscribers to A Little Peace and Quiet who make this stuff possible. I hope you take something out of this and that you continue to practice this skill, because the world needs your peace, the world needs your tranquility, but not as much as you do. So enjoy your adventures in the present moment. Feel free to comment below if you've got any questions. I'll hang around for the next 15 minutes or so. And also you can tweet me or Facebook me if you've got any questions about tonight's practices or mindfulness in general. Thanks so much for listening in, and have a great night or day wherever it is you are in the world. Good night.